Chipo was always quiet. She didn't argue, didn't shout. When Obinna yelled, she stayed silent. When he hurt her, she said nothing. People thought she was calm, maybe even obedient. But inside, she carried pain like a secret fire. Then one morning, she was gone. Her clothes were still in the wardrobe. Her shoes by the door. But Chipo was nowhere to be found. Obinna searched the house, confused, angry, nervous. On the kitchen table, he found a letter. Sealed. No name on it. Just one sentence on the envelope: "If I speak, we both die." He stared at it for hours. His hands shook, but he couldn't open it. He already knew. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was survival. That letter wasn't just paper. It was a mirror. A silent scream. A warning. Obinna started seeing her everywhere, in dreams, in crowds, in the corner of his guilt. But she never came back. Days passed. Then weeks. The neighbors whispered. She left him. She's dead. He did something. But no one knew for sure. Only he knew what lived inside that letter. He never showed it to anyone. He never burned it either. It stayed in his drawer like a ghost, reminding him every day. Her silence became louder than any scream. And now, that silence was his prison. She had given him nothing, no fight, no goodbye, but somehow, that quiet letter said everything. And it never stopped speaking. Not to him. Obinna loved that shirt more than anything he owned. It was a deep blue shirt, sharp at the collar, smooth on the skin, and always neatly pressed. People in the village called it his signature. He wore it to weddings, parties, church, even meetings. It made him feel powerful, important. Whenever he walked into a room with that shirt, heads turned. He smiled wider, stood taller. To him, the shirt wasn't just cloth, it was who he wanted to be. But that morning was different. He woke up to the smell of smoke. Not from the kitchen. Not from outside. It was coming from the backyard. He rushed out, barefoot and confused, heart beating fast. What he saw stopped him cold. His shirt, was burning. Hung on a stick, arms stretched out like a body, flames dancing over the fabric. It sizzled, crackled, turned black. All around it, silence. No wind. No people. Just smoke rising into the sky like a signal. Pinned to what was left of the collar was a half-burned note. For every bruise, a flame. His hands shook. His eyes darted around. Who did this? Who knew? He looked at the note again, reading it slowly, over and over. Each word felt like a slap. Each letter, a truth. He remembered the bruises Chipo once hid under long sleeves. The winces she gave when touched too hard. The way she flinched when he raised his voice. The way she stopped laughing. The day she stopped talking. He thought no one had seen. He thought it was in the past. Forgotten. Buried. But someone remembered. Someone had waited. And now, they spoke, not with words, but with fire. The villagers came out to see the smoke. Some looked surprised. Some whispered. A few watched him too long. Obinna stood frozen, trying to hide his face, trying to breathe. But the truth hung heavy in the air, thicker than the smoke. The shirt was gone, nothing left but black ash and that haunting message. For every bruise, a flame. He kept the note. He didn't know why. Maybe guilt. Maybe fear. Maybe both. He didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the flames. He heard the crackling. And behind it all, he imagined Chipo's voice, soft and low, asking just one question: do you feel it now? The next day, people avoided his eyes. They talked in corners, glanced his way, then looked away fast. His power, his pride, his presence, gone. Burned like that shirt. That message wasn't just about a shirt. It was about everything he thought no one noticed. The bruises. The silence. The control. The damage. It was all counted. And now, someone had started the fire. Obinna never wore another shirt like that again. Never walked as tall. The echo of the fire followed him, quiet but strong. He never found out who burned it. Or maybe, deep down, he knew. Maybe it was her. Maybe someone she told. Maybe it didn't matter. Because now, everyone had seen the smoke. And in their silence, he heard what they truly thought. The message wasn't just a warning. It was justice. Obinna was enjoying his quiet morning, sitting on the front step with a cup of tea in his hand. The sky was clear, birds were singing, and everything felt normal, until his neighbor walked by, holding a newspaper. The man paused, gave Obinna a strange look, and handed him the paper without saying a word. Obinna raised his eyebrows but unfolded the page slowly. What he saw made the cup fall from his hand and crash to the ground. There, in the property listing section, was a photo of his compound. His house. His land. Listed for auction. No name. No explanation. Just a bold line under it, for sale by public auction. Buyer, private. His heart pounded as he stared at the page, reading it again and again. It couldn't be true. It had to be a mistake. How could his house, the one he built, the one he lived in, be up for sale? He rushed to the council office, gripping the paper tightly. "This is wrong," he said to the clerk. "This is my home." The clerk looked at the listing and nodded. "Yes, it's real," he said calmly. "Documents are in order. Processed legally." Obinna's voice shook. "Who did this?" The clerk simply replied, "The buyer asked to stay private." When he stepped out of the office, the sun felt hotter, the street louder, and the stairs heavier. Whispers followed him through the village. People had already seen the news. Some looked at him with surprise. Others with quiet satisfaction. And then he heard someone say it, clear as day, "She owns him now." The words hit him hard. He knew exactly who "she" meant. Chipo. His wife. The woman he once dismissed, belittled, and controlled. The woman who walked away without a word, years ago. He used to think she had nothing. No power. No money. No future without him. But now it felt like she was everywhere, even in her absence. Back at home, Obinna searched through drawers and boxes. Old bank papers, property documents, anything. That's when he found it, an old joint account he had forgotten about. Her name was still there. He had laughed back then, told her it meant nothing. But maybe it meant everything. Buyers started coming by within days. Strangers stood outside his gate, taking photos and pointing. Some peeked through the fence. One woman even asked, "When is the inspection day?" Obinna said nothing. He couldn't. His mouth was dry, his body heavy. The auction sign was nailed to the gate the next morning. He tore it down. By afternoon, it was back. He sat outside every day after that, watching people walk by, whisper, stare. His pride, his voice, his control, it was all fading. He still didn't know who the buyer was. But the village didn't need names. They had already written the story. And it spread fast, like fire. She owns him now. The courtroom was full. Every seat was taken. People stood along the walls, some even outside, trying to peek in through the open doors. Obinna sat at the front, calm on the outside, but his fingers kept twitching. He wore a clean shirt, his best one, and tried to keep his head held high. He had been through court before. He was sure nothing would happen today. No proof, no witness. Just words. And words couldn't touch him. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Then sat. The session began. Obinna's lawyer spoke with confidence, repeating what they had said many times, that there was no evidence, no case. Then, the lawyer on the other side stood up. A woman. She was quiet, calm, but there was something strong in her eyes. She held a small speaker in her hand. "Your Honor," she said. "We have one final piece of evidence." The judge nodded. The courtroom grew silent. You could hear a pin drop. She pressed play. At first, there was only a crackling sound. Then, a voice. "I remember everything," it said. Obinna's face changed. His hands dropped. People in the courtroom gasped. Heads turned. The voice was soft, but clear. It was Chipo. Her voice. Her words. "I remember everything," she said again. The voice continued, slowly, telling her story. She spoke of nights full of fear, of words that cut deeper than fists, of hands that left bruises. She talked about how she stayed silent, hoping things would change. But they didn't. They got worse. And one day, she knew she had to leave. More gasps. A woman at the back wiped her eyes. Even the judge leaned forward, listening closely. Chipo spoke of how she hid a recorder behind the cupboard, hoping one day her truth would be heard, even if she wasn't there to speak it. She spoke of how silence had kept her safe, but not free. And now, she was ready. "If you hear this," she said in the recording, "then I made it out. And I want you to know, I remember everything. And I'm not afraid anymore." Obinna looked around, but no one looked at him with kindness. The room felt colder. Smaller. Like the truth had closed in. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, but the words stayed stuck in his throat. Chipo's voice had taken the room. Not with screams. Not with anger. But with truth. The judge asked where the recording came from. The lawyer replied, "It was delivered to us by Chipo herself. Weeks before this trial. She said she didn't need to appear in person. Her voice was enough." And it was. The recording ended. The courtroom stayed quiet for a long moment. The kind of silence that says more than shouting ever could. Outside, news reporters were already writing their headlines. "She speaks." The voice that broke the silence. Obinna sat still, his face pale. The man who once said she was too quiet, too weak, now sat broken by the one thing he thought she'd never use, her voice. She didn't come to the courtroom. But she didn't have to. Her voice did. And it changed everything. I remember everything. The courtroom was tense that day. Everyone knew the trial was reaching its end. Obinna sat at the front, surrounded by his lawyers. His face was stiff, his eyes tired. He had heard everything already, the evidence, the recording, the witness statements. All that was left now was the final witness. People whispered as they waited. Reporters adjusted their cameras. The judge looked toward the door. Then, it opened. A woman walked in slowly. Calmly. Dressed in all white. No loud colors, no makeup, no jewelry. Just plain white. The color of peace, but also the color of power in silence. It was Chipo. The room froze. Obinna turned to look. For a second, he didn't believe it. He hadn't seen her in years. Not in person. He had heard her voice in that recording, yes, but now here she was, real, standing, walking toward the witness box. She didn't look broken. She didn't look scared. She looked sure. Not angry, not crying. Just steady. She sat down, folded her hands, and looked straight ahead. The judge asked if she was ready. She nodded. "Do you have anything to say?" the lawyer asked gently. Chipo took a breath. Then said just one sentence. "I forgive, but I don't forget." That was it. Silence dropped over the room like a heavy blanket. Even the air felt different. No one moved. No one whispered. Obinna looked like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. What could he say now? The woman he had tried to silence was now sitting in front of everyone, dressed in the color of calm strength, and she had just spoken words more powerful than any long speech. The judge didn't rush. He gave space for the moment. Chipo didn't add anything more. She didn't cry. Not one tear. Her face remained calm, but firm. Her silence after the sentence said even more. She wasn't asking for pity. She wasn't begging for justice. She had already moved beyond pain. She had already won in her own way. Outside the courtroom, people were already reacting. Women nodded. Some were crying softly. One man whispered, "That's real strength." The newspapers would later print headlines like, "She wore white and said everything without a tear." "I forgive, but I don't forget," the words that shook the court. Obinna sat still, shrinking. The man who used to speak over her, who used to control the story, now couldn't even meet her eyes. Chipo stood up and walked out of the courtroom the same way she walked in, quiet, calm, unshaken. The echo of her shoes on the floor was the only sound in the room. And still, no one said a word. She didn't need to win the case to win the moment. She didn't need to shout to be heard. Her strength came not from anger, but from healing. And in that one moment, she showed everyone what real courage looks like. "I forgive, but I don't forget." 6 words. That was all. And that was everything. Obinna had always lived like a star. Wherever he went, people clapped. He gave speeches, wore expensive suits, smiled for cameras, and talked about change, progress, and family values. Big companies put money behind his name. Donors called him the future. Local politicians took photos with him like he was their pride. His posters were everywhere, in schools, on streets, even on billboards. Everyone knew him. Everyone respected him. Or so he thought. Then, one morning, the news broke. The headline was simple but strong: "Abuser in custody, his silent wife exposes him." At first, Obinna didn't react. He laughed. He told himself it was fake news, a bad joke. But the calls started pouring in, not from fans or supporters, but from people cutting ties. A major sponsor emailed him, "We are officially ending our partnership." Another said, "We can no longer be associated with your brand." He sat at his desk, refreshing his email, hoping for something different. But everything was falling apart. One by one, his sponsors pulled out. Politicians who once hugged him in public now unfollowed him online. A local leader tweeted, "We are shocked and deeply disappointed. We stand with survivors of abuse." Donors removed his face from their websites. And within a few hours, the man who was once everywhere, was nowhere. The world had heard the courtroom recording. Chipo's voice, quiet but firm, had told her truth. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply said, "I remember everything." That was enough. Her voice had reached hearts, opened eyes, and shook the image Obinna had built for years. Online, people started using hashtags like #SheSpoke and #BelieveHer. Women shared their stories. Survivors said they finally felt seen. One post read, "She was silent for years, and they still heard her. That gives me hope." Obinna sat in silence, staring at the TV as news anchors repeated his name with shame. His pictures were taken down from community centers. Invitations he once received stopped coming. People who smiled at him before now crossed the road to avoid him. His world was shrinking, fast. He tried to make statements, tried to deny, to explain. But no one cared anymore. The power had shifted. His silence no longer protected him. It turned against him. The same silence he once forced on Chipo had now wrapped around him, but this time it was cold, heavy, and empty. In a single day, he lost everything, his sponsors, his supporters, his reputation. Not because someone shouted. But because a quiet woman finally spoke. And the world listened. The sun was bright the day the town gathered for the opening of a new shelter. Banners fluttered in the wind, reading, Phoenix Haven, a home for new beginnings. People filled the space, curious and excited. They had heard whispers about who started it, but many still couldn't believe it until they saw her with their own eyes, Chipo. She stood at the front, dressed in calm colors, her face peaceful but strong. The same woman who had once disappeared in silence was now standing tall as the founder of a place built for women like her. People clapped. Some had tears in their eyes. Others just watched quietly. Chipo looked around, then stepped forward to speak. She didn't say much. Just a few simple words. This place is for the women who vanish, and rise. The crowd went silent, the words sinking deep. It wasn't just a building, it was a symbol. A message. That no woman's story ends in silence. Somewhere in the back, Obinna stood alone. No cameras pointed at him now. No suits, no sponsors, just a plain shirt and quiet eyes. He watched her from afar, unnoticed, just another face in the crowd. Once, he had power. Now, he was just a guest, forgotten. Chipo didn't look at him. She didn't need to. Her work, her presence, her voice, everything spoke louder than revenge ever could. She had risen. And in doing so, she gave others the strength to rise too.